What's up?
Hey, how are
Hello.
you? I'm just
Good.
bringing our other guests on.
What
I'm trying to.
happened? What happened here?
What's that?
What happened here? Where's the handlebar?
Oh, you know what? Hey, I shaved
Doesn't
it
make.
off. I shaved it off accidentally this morning, and I'll share that story. I'm just trying to bring Megan on right now if I can.
Maybe I'll make it faster. You never know.
I could use all the help I could get. Oh, there we go. Let me see here. Um, how's it going, Gene?
Good. How are you?
It's nice to meet you guys. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to find Megan here. There she is. No, hang on. All right, I've sent her that. Maybe it'll pop up here when she gets it. But how are you guys doing?
Good.
Good.
Great. Awesome. All right. Well, I may jump into things if I don't see Megan popping on here in a second. So just oh, she says she can see us, but let me see if she got my invite. Gotta love technology.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay, let's try this.
I see Celia joined.
Yeah, she's one of our biggest fans.
I know. I paced her at New York City Marathon, and
All
then she
right.
disappeared.
Hey.
Hello.
Yay!
You did it.
Yay! We all did it. All right, let's jump into this. So, I'm just going to start with a quick intro. Thanks for joining another episode of Yakkin with Yuri here on Goo Energy Labs. I'm the Elite Athlete Manager, and I'm super excited for this evening's chat. We're going to be talking about no aid station, no problem. We have some amazing guests tonight joining us to share their experiences from 2020, which we all know was a really odd year that caused us all to grow and change and learn. So I'm just going to randomly start with you, Francesca, because we share some prairie time together. Francesca is a Salty Squad member, which is Goo's Ambassador Athlete Program. She's an avid cyclist, runner, a gravel crusher. She did it's now called Unbound. It had a prior name prior to this in 2019. 200-mile gravel race in the Flint Hills of Kansas. She's also an animal lover who has this farm thing going on in St. Louis with her chickens and bees. So we may have to circle back to that at some point. And she has some rather large rides planned for this year. So I think you'll be able to share some really good information with us tonight about how to be self-sufficient. We also have Megan Schultz. Hi, Megan. She has a master's in sports leadership. She's the COO at Sports Backers. Since 2007, she's been there, which is a nonprofit in Richmond, Virginia, that works to inspire physical activity in all corners of the community. She oversees their events and programs. And for full disclaimer, Goo, we sponsor their marathon, the Richmond, Virginia Marathon, just so everybody knows. She also serves on the board. What's that?
I said thank you.
Oh, yeah, of course. She also serves on the board of Sportable, which is a nonprofit that works to provide sports and wellness opportunities for those with physical disabilities and visual impairments. At some point, you and I should chat separately. I've guided a blind rider before in my past
Cool.
on a mountain bike, and he is on his own bike. Crazy experience, but that's not what we're talking about tonight. And then I have Gene. He's also a Salty Squad member. He has an undergrad in biology and nutrition, a graduate degree in public health with a focus in healthcare policy and hospital administration, and you are the director of performance and improvement. But where?
At a major hospital in Brooklyn. But hopefully today we can improve our performance with nutrition.
Yes. And I also will mention that Celia told me that you were too humble to mention that you won a virtual event this year, which is one of our questions. You're also a pace group leader for the New York Marathon, and you became addicted to Ironmans in 2016, I think.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yep.
All
I
right.
actually paced Celia at New York City Marathon.
Even better.
And she gave me this amazing shirt that says "I heart goo."
There you go. Right. I mean, one of our core beliefs or core tenets at GOO is love and sharing that love with our community. So I'm so stoked to have you guys here. And I've seen a number of comments. People are commenting like you did about me missing my handlebar mustache that's been on my face for a while. And I'll just share this morning, I put the wrong blade on and it took too much off. And I was like, the whole thing's got to go. So, you know, new year, new me, I guess. But we're not here to talk about me. I want to talk about the ever-changing and evolving face of events and how things may look as events begin to open back up and we get to go and be with our endurance family again and experience racing, probably in a little bit different way. But that's what we're here to talk about and share your experiences. I told all of you that I would give you the opportunity to share something else about yourself that I may have missed. Is there anything else you want to throw at our audience right now? Don't be shy.
I feel like I'm among like the actual athletes. I'm definitely more on the organizing side. So I feel very excited to be among like participants and real athletes here. So
yeah, well, I'm excited to talk to you because as an event director, you have a lot on your plate, a lot to considering this past year and all the different rules and regulations, right, from county to county, and it's super complicated. But Gene, is there anything else I missed in like your intro that we feel like we need to get out there?
No, not really. I coach triathletes, so I do have a lot of experience with talking to people about how to fuel for races. So I'm happy to be here and hopefully it's gonna be a productive discussion.
Perfect. Awesome. So I just want to start, I shared this with all of you that did any of you do, you know, a virtual event in 2020? As we all know, you know, 2020 was a year that forced all athletes to pivot, adjust, right, get creative with how they trained and maybe raced virtually. Some of those virtual events were like on Zwift or other platforms like that. There were certain, you know, virtual events like Rebecca Rush's Giddy Up for Good, where you could go out and Everest or do a certain amount of climbing outside. Right, we all had to learn how to be more self-sufficient during the pandemic, whether that was, you know, learning how to pack, right, for the long haul, find that secret water faucet, because I don't know about where you guys live, but here in California, a lot of the parks turned off all their faucets, so you couldn't get water at all my secret spots. So I had to get more creative with where I found water. Or maybe even set up your own aid station of sorts. And that sort of leads right into our topic tonight, you know, no aid station, no problem. But did anybody do any virtual events? And I'll start with you, Francesca.
I did some Zwift rides, like the normal Tour de Zwift and things like that. I did kind of made up one of my own rides, which was the whole Katy Trail I told you about. So we did that in 2 days. That was almost Dirty Kansas-like.
So 200 miles for folks that don't know the distance of DK, right?
Yeah, it was 250.
Yeah.
Over 2 days. So actually 255 maybe. It was like 135 and 125. And in a lot of ways, that's even harder than, you know, doing DK or Unbound. And then my run club actually came up with a run at our local park. It was a relay, and I think it was a 6-hour relay. They did a couple, and I got to join in for one. And so it was all outside, social distance, and that was like when it was good weather outside.
Yeah.
And there was another one going around that was like a 12-hour race that started at like 6 p.m. and went to 6 a.m. So if you ran like 1.3 miles an hour, then you could do a marathon. So they kind of did some fun stuff, and I kind of did that when I could.
Yeah.
But nothing super official.
How did you support your kiddie ride? Did you have drops? Did you have a follow vehicle? Did you have it all in a pack? Just curious.
I've got the Camelback, the vest, the chase vest, and that holds a ton. So between that and my 2 bottles on the bike, I do 1 bottle of Roctane, and then the rest is all water. And then I carry gels, waffles, an extra, like a refill of Roctane, and chews. And then we just did gas station stops. So
Yeah.
we did a proper stop for lunch and refilled our bottles there. But I mean, I hold enough to do a century on my back because that's kind of how you gotta train. You gotta
Yeah.
carry as much of your stuff as you can.
Yeah.
And then we had like large seat bags that held our clothes for overnight. We just did like a credit card kind of tour
Yeah.
where we stayed at a hotel halfway.
That sounds like fun. What about you, Gene? I know you won a virtual event, but maybe you could share a little bit of your like 2020, air quotes racing experience, what that was
Yeah.
like for you.
So 2020 was a little bit difficult. I work in a hospital and ended up being front line for a couple of months of the pandemic. So it was basically 7 days a week. So during that time, I was trying to ride every day. During the summer, once things sort of calmed down in New York a little bit, I did do a few self-supported century or 120-mile rides up to Bear Mountain. So I'll just echo the Camelback and the bladder is the way to go. A lot of time, water is the biggest issue.
Yeah.
I know in terms of nutrition, just as an Ironman triathlete, we're sort of used to carrying 1,500 or 2,000 calories on the bike. But you basically stuff any goo, either the chews or the waffles into any of your bento bags, a couple in the back of your jersey, and you're good to go for the day. I mean, 1,500 or 2,000 calories is more than enough. The biggest issue was honestly the water.
And I'm assuming you have your like secret spots, kind of like I did to track down water, or going into convenience stores to refuel on big
Yeah.
days? Or...
So I did have the bladder and I did have 2 bottles on the bike, which were okay. About halfway through, I stopped by a convenience store and did a quick little refill. And also I had these little sanitizer packs because we know we're like touching everything on the bike. You're not supposed to touch your face.
Yeah.
That's a big no-no. So I would sanitize right after I touched all the handles, and knock on wood, it was a good day.
Yeah. Megan, did you do any virtual events? And then if not, I have a couple questions for you as an event promoter who had to navigate 2020, which was just obviously a complete nightmare for somebody in your position.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. As an event organizer, we're not usually able to participate in our own events. So 2020 had this like weird opportunity to actually do some of the stuff that we were doing. So we ended up introducing 14 new events and drastically modifying current events in our portfolio. A good number of the new events we introduced were certainly virtual. And so I was able say again.
Can you share what those looked like or what they were, just for folks out there? Yeah.
Absolutely. So at the onset, the very first virtual event we did was very t-shirt sale driven, go out, do a 5K, right? So it was called the Taco Trot. We were just, so it was May. So that made it May. It was just one of those, like, we're going to just do a trendy virtual event. And then we got a lot more creative and innovative. And frankly, even just kind of the normal virtual events were successful for us. They were important to keeping us going and sustainable. But I would say our Great American 5000, which was a virtual challenge event that consisted of teams up to 24, and you were basically accumulating miles and moving your dot across the country. And so you started in San Francisco and ended in New York. And we're actually in the midst, that event just kicked off again for us April 10th, so this past Saturday. But that was a highly successful event for us. We had just under 5,000 people join us for that challenge. And it was, again, that was something that personally I got to participate in on a team. A lot of when it comes to virtual events, for us, a lot of what our ops and logistics teams normally handle, a lot of that work shifted to our marketing team. And so much of the experience was driven by the emails people got as they entered a state, and Instagram posts that we were posting about fun facts as you're going through a state. So it was more than just going out and doing a couple miles a day. There was just a team accountability associated with it. There was this experience of feeling like you were going across the country through the emails and content we were delivering. The event is actually pretty special. In fact, it could be one that continues post-pandemic for us.
That is really cool. I mean, you essentially had to sort of reimagine yourself as an event promoter and take a live event, make it virtual,
Yep.
and then somehow keep that community connected there. That's really impressive. I had no idea that you guys were able to do something like that, to pivot like that.
Yeah, so we ended up creating 22 new events or programs during the pandemic. Everything from virtual to a virtual challenge to what we then started to describe as kind of an in-person hybrid, which I'm happy that I think it will be important to talk about how we did our Richmond Marathon when that's appropriate. But yeah, there was a ton of pivoting, and we used a process that we've kind of deemed the sprint process. And what that looks like is our whole staff got together virtually and on Zoom, and we really just kind of let the doors open wide in terms of the ideas you could throw out. There was really no bad ideas, and we actually meant that. And we were willing to fail as long as the risk wasn't too great. But the process allows you to throw out a lot of great ideas, bad ideas, just throw it all out there. And then the very next day, we would get together and vet the ideas that really kind of surfaced up, bubbled up as good ones. And next thing you know, we're building out concepts on the ones that make the most sense. So the idea behind the process is that you're not waiting days between meetings. You are going quickly developing these concepts, because we had to go to market quick to make anything work.
Yeah, I mean, that's a major pivot to go from physically setting up event to then having the proper IT or computer support or folks with that kind of knowledge to be able to create an event like that. Did you have to bring on new folks to make that happen, or did you already have the talent within your ranks to pivot like that?
So on the marketing side, we're very blessed with an incredibly talented team already that already promote all the events that we were doing previously, as well as the programmatic work that we do in the community. So from that perspective, all the content generation was really done internally. And then we have great partners at Run Sign Up, which is our registration platform. As we and all kinds of other event organizers were pivoting, they knew it was really important to make their platform more user-friendly and better adaptable for these virtual challenges. And so their platform allowed us to have participants track their miles. And then on top of that, for the map and kind of dot process, so you could visibly see your team dot moving across the map. You could see the hundreds of other teams that were participating where they were on the map, all live tracking. We use another partner called Track Leaders, Scott with Track Leaders, he does this type of thing, kind of dots on a map. He does that with live events and was able to convert it to the virtual form based on the mileage being tracked within our registration system. So it was definitely a lot of moving pieces.
But I guess one of the things that came out of 2020 is you guys have a whole new race platform that sounds could be super successful alongside your in real life events too. I'm gonna pivot away. We'll come back, but Francesca, training and riding wise, how did 2020 look different than other years for you, or did it? Obviously, you were probably riding more solo miles, but I'm just curious. And this, Gene, I'll fire the same question at you too. But how was it different for you? Just curious.
I mean, at first it was amazing. There were no cars on the road. That was
Right, amen to
the
that.
best. Like March and April were the best 2 months of the whole year because it was like no traffic. It was awesome. For me, it was more like, hey, let's focus on cross training or things that I'm not good at because there are no races this year. So that was probably the biggest thing that I did. Since I've really ride a ton, I did more running, weightlifting, and things like that to kind of prevent injury.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I shifted it. Yeah, just kind of treating it like an off season.
Yeah. Gene, you?
So about halfway through, I realized there were not going to be any races. I know people were sort of holding out hope, but being that my background is in epidemiology and all this stuff, I sort of knew where this was going. So I decided to put my TT bike on the trainer and take out my road bike and just ride with that the entire season. And honestly, I forgot how much I enjoyed just riding my road bike without being on the TT, without having a race to focus for. It was nice to sort of be free with however many miles you can do it. There were no sort of benchmarks that you had to meet. There were no power standards before the race. There was no taper. It was just enjoyment.
Yeah, fun, right? Getting back to why we should all be doing these things that we do, keeping it fun. So since you are a health professional and we're starting to see events open up more, and this is a bit of a loaded question maybe, what gives you pause? Western States ticket there, aid stations, he couldn't have any contact, right, with his support crew. They had to leave it. He said it was a bit like a ghost town, but we're slowly, right, starting to see that light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm wondering what's on your radar for this coming year.
So I'm signed up to do Unbound again, or for the first time, 200. And we have a local race called Tour of Herman in Herman, Missouri, which is really cool. It's a great training race. It is 1 month out, so it's the first weekend of May. And the first day is 3 30-ish mile loops and tons of climbing, like 10,000 feet of climbing in 100 miles. So it's twice as much climbing as Unbound.
Yeah.
And then the second day is 2 50-mile loops, and you can do any combination. You can do 1, 2, or 3 the first day, and you can do none the second day. You can do both. You can do one. You can skip the first day and just come. I mean, you've got 5, different loops that you're riding, and you pick and choose. So if you're training for something like Unbound, your goal is to do all of them.
Yeah.
And the second day, going out for that second 50-mile loop, knowing that it's 50 or bust, it's tough because you know how much climbing is going to be in it. So that's my big training race, and that'll be in about 2 weeks. And it's cool to come back because that kind of helps you as far as like the aid station, like practicing for that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, so I usually, like, for the 30-mile loops, I'll skip, like, the first one. I come back anyways. They do it out of a park. And so you can just come back to your car and you're, riding over, like, the chip timer. And then you go to your car and, spend as much time as you want. And they've had some supplies in the past. I don't know what they'll have this year. But I never, like, really relied on them. I, wanted to practice being my own aid station back in 2019, the last time that we had races.
Yeah.
So that one's a great. We're lucky that we have it, and it's gravel also. And so there's some climbs that hit almost 19% grade. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's harder than the actual race. So if I can do that, I can do anything.
Yes, you can. Is that a new event, or has that event always had that type of format even pre-COVID?
Pre-COVID, yeah.
Really?
I think it's been around like over 10 years.
That's a great, the fact that you can support yourself out of the car, like, that's perfect.
Some people come and they ride 30 miles of fantastic gravel and then they go home and they come back the next day and they might do 50 and that's it. Or
Yeah.
some people can only make one day, so they'll come out and they'll do a gravel century, just one day.
Yeah. Gene, what about you? What's this year looking like for you race wise? What are you thinking?
So already several cancellations,
Yeah.
but for now, what hasn't been canceled, what hopefully goes through. Right now, I'm registered for Ironman Lake Placid, the 70.3 in Maine, and then the Chicago Marathon, and then hopefully pacing New York City again.
Yeah.
So hopefully those all happen, and keeping my fingers crossed. I'm wondering what they're going to do with a race that size, in terms of distancing and in terms of precautions. But I'm sure that they're working with the local authorities, and hopefully things can go on.
Well, I mean, you're talking probably about Chicago and Ironman, the size of both of those, or particularly Chicago
So
Marathon?
particularly Chicago and New York
Yeah.
City. I think Ironman is a little bit more spread out, just because it's like 1,500 or 2,000 people, as opposed to New York City, which gets 50,000 and then about 1 million spectators.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering how that's going to happen. I'm sure there's going to be some changes, maybe a local only race. I don't know, but hopefully things go on, or hopefully, everyone's vaccinated by then. It's very safe, and things can go on normally.
Any sense of, we've probably all witnessed Ironman aid stations and people just running down the train and cups flying and hands touching and all of that. Any sense of what those aid stations may look like, or how you, if they aren't going to be there, how you're planning to be able to carry everything for your 70.3 or the Chicago or the New York?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. As we've all seen, the water stations are a little bit messy. I think it can be safe if everyone is sort of sanitized and one cup, one person, no double handoffs, and everyone's masked from the volunteer end. I think it can be safe. Surface transmission is fairly low.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be overly concerned, but there are definitely steps you can take. So I feel as though if maybe they give a bottle or something, just to sort of reduce contact points. So let's say if you go to 5 aid stations instead of 10, that's some reduction of risk.
Yeah, that's interesting. Just, lower the number of contact points.
Yeah.
I was on an interesting call, I guess, last year, early on, with USAC, the governing body for cycling, and their, doctor, his biggest concern was the porta potties at that point, that congregation point, because as we all know, there's a lot of people around those areas. So, Megan, does that force you as a promoter to have more, which is another added expense? Or I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, we are very optimistic about being back on our normal race course in Richmond in November. Obviously, knowing we're going to have to take some additional mitigation strategies, and I do think that could mean more porta johns. It could mean less water stops. We can even see that, we have volunteers filling water, but you're actually just grabbing the water from the table as opposed to exchanging person to person. So I think there's some strategies there. I foresee that staff and volunteers will continue to be masked at that point too. And so, but we are definitely optimistic. And I would say on the participant side, just from numbers that we're seeing, both internally with our own races as well as data from our registration platform Run Sign Up, participants are optimistic too.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing good numbers. We're seeing that demand. The demand is there. People are ready to go. So from that perspective, I think, there's always going to be some folks that might have some hesitancy, but we're certainly seeing that demand. And I don't feel like I even have to say this, but obviously safety is the priority. And I think we tried to make that very clear with our event this past November. But alongside that is we are planning to have a finish line and for you to cross, and like that, and we've proven that we can do that as a race organizer. but we also are planning to be back on our normal course in November. So
at same numbers as usual, and what, like, participant numbers, or we have to cut those back?
yeah, I think the reality is we will be lower than normal. So normally we are in that 18 to 20,000 range.
Oh, I didn't know you were that big. Wow.
Yep,
That's
and yeah, and so in 2020, between the folks that showed up in person and the folks that still did our event virtually, we had around 5,500. So that's a large range, but we're going to be bigger than that, right? But I don't know that we'll be all the way back to kind of normal status. And at some point, yeah, we may have a capacity thing just based on things that ordering deadlines, timelines, those kinds of things also dictate some capacity. For
This is definitely a left hook question. Do you foresee having to, like, enforce mask mandates? I know, once again, this is crystal ball. That's way off in November. We could be sort of out of the woods, hopefully, right, by that point. But that is something I would imagine you guys have had to contemplate. And I'll step back real quickly because, obviously, we sponsor a lot of large events in some states, right, where mask mandates are going away. But the events are then put into position to make their participants feel safer, right? Everybody should have masks, but it creates this tension and friction, which I'm hoping doesn't happen. But I think, that's a real situation that could happen. I'm particularly thinking of Unbound, Francesca, so yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, from our perspective, anything we've done in person, whether it has been a full-on in-person event, which we've done a couple of those with very limited fields, or that kind of hybrid model, we have required participants to wear masks up until the point of racing. And so, once you're going through the start structure, you're able to remove the mask. I can foresee I would think in November we're still requiring masks. In Virginia, our mask mandate is primarily indoors. Right now, it is also if you can't keep distance and you're outside, you should still wear a mask. But the mandate's really indoors. But I can see, just from perception and also just making folks feel safe, and us feeling good about the product we're delivering, I would think that masks will still be a thing, but like everything, we'll be ready to to kind of evolve as the guidelines evolve.
Yeah. I'm going to pivot a little bit here back to the two athletes here. Not that you're not an athlete, because I didn't even share, Megan, that you have basketball in your genes and won some titles and stuff like that. So I apologize for not mentioning that. But like, Gene, what's been your biggest learning or takeaway or insight, from 2020 as you go into 2021 and racing? I mean, beyond this whole idea of, like, how we be more self-sufficient out there, do you have any, kernels of wisdom or anything that you'd like to share with our audience? And I'm going to hit you with the same question, Francesca, so you have a moment to think about it.
So, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway was how important recovery is. I feel like before all this, baseline stress level was maybe at a 3 or 4. With the mask mandates and with sort of the situation just on the street, you're just at an elevated stress level. And we see this driving, we see this on the roads, we see this in daily interactions. And so my biggest thing was sort of prioritizing or trying to prioritize recovery enough, and just sort of understanding that this is something happening outside. Training is added stress, and just to be mindful of that fact and to sort of be okay with missing a day or 2 or 3, just to give your body, both mental and physical state, some recovery.
Yes. 2020 added a lot of stress, right, and strain to all of our lives. Not the good stress and strain, right, that we put on our cardiovascular or muscular systems when we're training, but one point there, sleep, people. Sleep is your best friend for recovery. That's like the most overlooked thing. You have all these fancy, like, recovery tools and compression legs, but more sleep will help you.
Go to sleep.
Go to sleep, exactly. Francesca, what about you? Like, learnings, takeaways, insights from 2020 that'll maybe help you with 2021?
I mean, for me, it was like making sure that in a busy day that I prioritized working out, whether that was like a an off day and I just did something super leisure, or like for me that was like how I stayed sane,
Me
was,
too.
you know,
Mhm.
my physical outlet. I was gonna say something but I forgot, because you can
Well,
tell I didn't work out today.
that's yeah. Megan,
Um,
what I'll come did you get it?
no, I
Okay.
didn't.
Okay. Megan, what about you as an event promoter? You know, you've had a ton of learnings and insights and takeaways. And it sounds like you and your crew have pivoted and actually created a whole new race model for yourselves, this whole virtual aspect of things. But what are some things you could share with our audience that you've learned in the past year?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is just how important, particularly on the event organizer side, how important communication is. You know, I think that's something that we did really well. We were really transparent when something popped up. We let people know. We over communicated, and I think as a result, people were really trusting what we were doing and appreciating our efforts. Like that all seemed to work well, and it also helped us manage participant expectations. I think that is just a huge thing, being able to communicate what to expect, particularly at an event when you're like you have added stress and you're not quite sure what this will be like. So being able to communicate, I think, was huge for us. And then I would say too, just that focus on innovation. I think that'll be something that we carry over just in general. We've talked a lot about it as a staff, that you know, we don't have to just innovate in crisis, though that was very appropriate. But it also can be something that we carry over as we continue to grow as an organization. So yeah,
And
lots of grace, lots of grace.
lots of grace. Yeah. Yeah. Grace, patience.
Yes.
Yeah. Kindness, all of that. Yeah. Those are
Yes.
all qualities that as participants, as race promoters, we all need. And, you know, I was riding with some editors from Velo News a few weeks back, and we were talking about this very topic. And one of them mentioned less judgment, right? Because these are unheard of times, right? Unprecedented times. And as we've talked about tonight, not all health mandates are the same through different states, and you're seeing things open up, and it's so easy for us to like quickly judge, but we don't maybe necessarily know the exact details of that situation. So it's really dynamic and fluid situation that can lead to stress, Gene, right? And friction and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how things unfold this year. But I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, like you guys are, just like getting excited about events. I mean, in fact, I just found out that I'm going to be able to attend an event that was not on my calendar, that I am really excited to go back to, that I wasn't going to go to this year. And so hopefully you guys have things like that on your calendars too, Francesca and Jean, that have opened up now, that things are getting a little bit better. I'm going to just throw this out there. Any final thoughts that you would like to share with folks as we wrap up this awesome chat? I really appreciate you guys sharing your time and your knowledge and your passion tonight. I'll start with Eugene. Any final thoughts for folks as we look at a brighter event future in 2021?
Yeah, I mean, always sort of expect things to happen, but don't be too disappointed if they don't. I know last year there were a lot of people that are very, very upset things weren't happening, and I understand them. I had about 7 or 8 events canceled, but we have to take it in stride. Worst comes to worst, there's next year, and you know, we'll be better for it, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully it's this year, and if not, there's always next year.
Good point. Patience, people. Francesca.
Go for it. Pack a bunch of snacks. Pack a bunch of snacks and just get out there and have fun. No stress, no worries. You're not training for anything. Just have fun with it and remember why you started doing it in the first place.
Exactly. Fun.
It's a food race, right? It's an eating contest.
I love that. You're hired. You've been plugging Goo and doing all that. Thank you. That is great. Yeah. Be prepared, right? That's what the whole topic tonight was, right? If there are no aid stations, right?
And
What
try
do
new
you do?
things.
You pack the snacks. You pack the
Yep.
food. Yeah. Megan, we'll end with you. Any final thoughts for folks as we look at a brighter 2020?
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think 2020 provided a ton of perspective. Like, as event organizers that you guys know, I mean, it means weekends and nights and time away from your family. And I know I've really enjoyed additional time, but it's crazy that I am missing the 16-hour days. And like, that perspective is interesting. I think what will be cool though is this mix now of what we've learned to do virtually and being able to, for me personally, being at home a little bit more with my kids because I'm working from home, and to have that flexibility continue, but then to also have the 16-hour days and be out in the sun and working hard and all of that. Like, perspective's everything. So it's definitely shown us a lot from that point of view.
The fact that you have 2 race platforms now gives a participant who's maybe not comfortable, right, stepping into that Richmond, marathon with 20,000 folks, the opportunity to still compete, connect, be with their community in a way that makes them feel safe, which is great. And hopefully, they'll circle back to the big one when they feel comfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I really appreciate all of you sharing your time and knowledge and passion with our audience. I hope I get to see you in person. I know as Goo's community manager, I miss my people, right? Our endurance tribe, our family. And it's been really fun to chat with you guys and share some knowledge and stories. And I wish you well and have a great season. And as Francesca said, Goo for it.
That's right.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Yakkin.
See you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, totally. Until the next time. Bye, you guys.
See ya.
Bye.